What's up, guys? Cody Bidlow with sprintingworkouts.com and ATHLETE.X. Today we're going to talk about the progression that I don't hear anybody talking about, so I'm bringing it to you to give you an idea of how you can incorporate it in your training. Just finishing up a session now, so excuse me if I'm out of breath. Warmed up with the ATHLETE.X, hit some resisted sprints, hit a start, hit a 30, 240s, 170, 300s. Ran 1090, 1089, 1091. My best 30-meter segment was 293. My best start was 392 to 30. It'd be faster, but I ran day before yesterday. Usually I take more time off in between, but because of the track's going to be closed, I got to work Monday out of town, so I don't think I'm going to be able to train again until at least Tuesday. So I figured today I'd come out, hit a good solid session, then take a few days off so I can let that stimulus set in and benefit from it. Now, normally when we think about training progressions, we think of short to long, long to short, heavy strength training, getting into maybe some power training or velocity training. It could be a progression in distance, in intensity, volume. There's all kinds of different progressions. Most training systems are going to do what I call training the component parts. So they're going to train acceleration at a certain time or a certain part of the week or a certain session. They're going to train speed at a different time or in a different session of the week. You may be going from longer sprints to shorter sprints to longer sprints over time. But typically you'll see progressions in distance, intensity, and then also within the component parts, you might see a progression of acceleration, a progression of speed endurance, and that sort of thing. But the progression that I do not hear anybody talking about out there is from training the component parts to training the main event. I think this applies mostly to running, probably more than anything. You could apply it to jumping with short approach versus long approach jumps in practice and that sort of thing. But since this is a sprinting focused channel, the topic is mainly directed at sprinting. Why do I think this is important? Well, first of all, if all you ever train are the component parts, but you never bring it together to train your actual competitive event, the first time you're exposed to it is going to be in competition. Can you expect to be at your best if the first time you've done a 100-meter from blocks against a gun, and even better against other people, if the first time you're doing that is in competition when the stress is high, it's harder to focus and that sort of thing, do you think you're going to be setting yourself up to run the fastest time possible? I don't think so. I think you need to train at some point in your preparation before you compete. You need to train the actual event. It doesn't necessarily need to be 100 meters exactly. It could be 80s, 90s, 100s, 110s, 120s, but it should be something close to your competitive distance and done in a way to where you're incorporating the race model into your training. We want to build each of these component parts so that we can bring up each quality that we're depending on to run fast. But the problem is that if you never actually put it together in a lower stress situation such as practice, it's going to take a lot of reps in competition to get it. And most competitions, you only get 100. Maybe you're lucky and you have meets where you can run a prelim and a final, but most of the meets that I go to and that I see posted online, you get one chance. Say you compete 10 times in a year, you only have 10 chances to train your competitive event, and you're doing it in a situation where it's harder to learn, it's harder to focus, and while you do get a great stimulus from racing, I just question how much are you going to get out of it if that's the only time you ever touch the competitive event. If you were training for a powerlifting competition and you had never gotten close to your max in the gym when you're practicing, would you be likely to hit the max that you want to hit in the meet? I don't think so. Obviously you have to balance, how much intensity you can put into your program, how often you're training, how much you can recover, do you have any injuries you're dealing with. All those things are still going to be something you need to consider. But ultimately, the point here is that there needs to be a certain point in the year where you're training very close to or training the competitive event itself. So that way when you go to a meet, you're not sitting there, looking like a deer in the headlights because you haven't done this before. If instead you've done 80s, 90s, 100s, 110s, 120s from blocks in practice with a gun or a clap against other athletes, then when you get to the meet, all you have to do is do what you've already done. Whereas if you never train it, now you got to do something different when you're at the meet, and I think you're going to be less likely to have the best average time at a minimum throughout your season. You'll probably start a lot slower and then improve, but I'd rather hit that first meet running fast so that I can improve from that point rather than run slower what I know I'm capable of and have to make up a bigger gap. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys. I think it's something that you can all incorporate into your training. You don't need to reinvent the whole wheel, but just think about, how do I bridge these component parts of my training into training the main event, so that way when I get to competition, I'm already ready. Now to recap on the session here, I averaged pretty well. I averaged 1090. Day before yesterday I ran 1085. The main difference there being that my acceleration was better. Why was my acceleration better? Well, I was fresher. I had multiple days off prior to that. I think because I did so many starts the other day, I kind of zapped my acceleration ability. I still ran well. I ran 392 to 30. My best, which I equaled the day before yesterday, is 386. So I was only 0.06 off at 30 meters, but that 0.06 made the difference between running a slower 100 time today versus what I ran the other day. But on a positive note, my 30 to 100 split, my 30 to 40 split, my 40 to 70 split, my 70 to 100 split, all of those were better. And I care more about that because my acceleration, as long as I'm fresh, is probably going to be there. But what hasn't been there lately for me is the second half of the race. Main reason is, well, two things. One, my right ankle has been a chronic issue, and my left hamstring. With my left hamstring, I've had inhibition to where I run in a very overly vertical manner. We need to apply vertical force, but if you can't let that knee open at all as the leg's coming through and you just sort of stab into the ground, I think you'll be more likely to break a lot. You also won't produce as much force because you're sort of, I've been guarding the hamstring and trying to limit the lengthening in the hamstring so I don't get hurt. So I've been working on that, and that's one reason why I've been increasing the reps in practice and not competing, is so that I can get more reps working on letting the leg open up and then swing down and back. So I'm running with good technique. And then with my right ankle, I've been doing some isometrics, some other exercises, and just trying to manage that as best as I can so I can get through to the end of the season and then take a break, do some rehab, heal up, and then start to feel better. So all in all, I'm happy with how today went. I got a few days off in front of me so I can recover and hopefully come back and run well in my next session. But I got to get home, get back to my family. It's getting late out here. It's like 8 o'clock already. So I'm going to shut it down. It's the end of the work week. Time to rest. Hope you're all doing well. And I promise it will not be a year until I post the next video. But until next time, this is Cody Bidlow with SprintingWorkouts.com and ATHLETE.X, signing off.